What's up, guys? It's Doo Poker here for Drive HUD, and we're going to talk about a hand that was posted on 2+2 that got me thinking a lot, actually. On the surface, it looks like a normal hand, but once you start digging a little deeper, you realize there's actually a ton of options and a ton of advanced concepts that are coming into play. So, the hand in question is the button opens 4x in the actual hand played, and the hero calls with ace of spades, seven of spades in the big blind. Alright, first off, a note on pre-flop play. I just want to give you my bunker ranges real quick. Pre-flop, I should have had this up already, my fault. Big blind defending range. Okay. A7 suited is about a 45% 3-bet. So just remember that when you're in the big blind and the button opens. So 55% of the time we're going to call. Alright, let's go back to the hand. So 55% of the time we're calling, so let's say we call this time. The flop comes 10-4-2 rainbow. We have a backdoor flush draw, we have an overcard, and a backdoor straight draw. Alright. We check to the pre-flop raiser, which we should be doing 100% of the time. And the button checks back. Now, let's go into our solver and look at the ranges here. Okay. So, one thing you're going to notice, this is a 75% c-bet strategy. Look at all the sets. The sets are always bet on the flop. 2s, 4s, 10s. All the overpairs are mostly bet. Let's look at the EV difference. Actually, a decent EV difference. Okay. So, when he checks back the flop, like he did in this hand, he's immediately capped. What does that mean? Well, a capped range is when you're out of position. A capped range is when your opponent either checks the flop or the turn. The idea behind a capped range is if your opponent had a really strong hand, he would bet either the flop or he would bet the flop and the turn. So once he checks, he's going for pot control. Now, people can say, oh, well, I'm going to be tricky and check back the flop with a set. It's like, okay, well, now your flop c-bet range is weaker because you have less sets in it, so I can check raise you more. So we could go back and forth all day. But I'm just talking about from a theory point of view. When your opponent checks the flop, he's capped. Okay, so that's the first thing. Alright. Now it's on us. 6 of spades turn. Now, is that turn card better for us or for the opponent? Well, let's think about our range here. We have 3-5 suited in our range, yes. Let's look at Munker ranges pre-flop. These are all Munker ranges. Look at our combos. 30.3% of all hands are 401.7 combos. Okay? Let's look at his combos. 42.7%. So we have less combos in our big blind calling range than he has in his raising range. What does that mean? That means our range is more condensed. And if we have 100% of 3-5 suited in our range, and he doesn't, 5-3 suited is not even an open in Munker, then the equity shifts in our favor when he checks back the flop. So let's go to the turn. Let's go to the turn. Let's look at our equity on the turn. We are actually we are 0.01% ahead. So the equity is actually pretty much the same. But since he checked the flop, he has no sets in his range, theoretically, and no overpairs. So how do we react to this? Well, in the actual hand, hero bet around 50% pot. But I think we can do better than that. So first, I want to do an aside and talk about bet sizing strategy. Now, when you're thinking about bet sizes on the flop, I want to go to this hand real quick. This is the hand in question. I'm going to look at it from the villain's point of view. Let's look at the difference in EV from a flop c-bet sizing. If you bet 33%, if you're the villain, your EV is 2.98. If you bet 50, it's 3. 75, 3, and 100, 2.99. Do you see how the EV is less than 1% difference between all the sizings? This brings me to my next point. When constructing your range, my old coach told me this, and I actually never really understood why he told me this, but now I do. He told me that you want one flop c-bet sizing, you want two turn sizings, and you want two river sizings. Well, why is this? Why do we want one flop c-bet sizing? Well, let's go back to this. Do we see that the EV difference is almost nothing between a flop c-bet size of 50% and a flop c-bet size of 100%? Yes. Okay. So now, let's go to... If we split our flop c-bet sizings into two trees, and let's say we have a 50% flop c-bet sizing and a 100% flop c-bet sizing, that means we now have to learn double the ranges. So, not only does one flop c-bet size simplify the game tree, but it also is not any difference in EV, because like we just saw, the difference in EV from 50 and 100 is nothing. So we get two benefits from one flop c-bet sizing. We get to simplify the game tree because we're early on in the hand. So if we split the game tree now, we're going to have to learn all the sizing. Let's say we split 50 and 100. Now we have to learn two sizings for the 50 game tree and two sizings for the river game tree, and we have to do the same thing for the 100% c-bet flop sizing. And there's no difference in EV. So then why don't we just have one sizing for everything? Well, it's a good point. But the turn is where the sizing actually begins to matter. So the turn sizing, there's actually a decent difference. And if you bet on this turn, if you bet 33% and let's say an overbet, there's a huge difference in EV. And that's the point of this video. This is an overbet spot. Not only was the flop checked, which caps your opponent's range, but the turn card is better for us. So we want to split our range into checks, small sizing, overbet sizing. So how do we do this? All right. Well, I made this little... I know it's a lot to take in, but you can handle it. All right. So the way we split up our turn sizing is we want to bet the turn small with hands that either are middling, like a 10-9 offsuit or Jack 10 suited, or a hand that wants to go for a cheap bluff, and also hands that are not that good. So our turn sizing is basically hands that have a little bit of showdown value, hands that have top pair weak kicker that want to get some real value, and then hands that want to go for a cheap bluff. So what are some hands that bet the turn here? Well, we bet 60.7% of our range on the turn for 33% sizing when the flop goes check check. Let's look at some of the hands that bet. I want to go back to this because... So we're going to be betting, this is the flop, 10, 4, 2, 6 on the turn. We're going to be betting all of our top pair weak kickers. We're going to be betting hands like Ace X 2. And then we're going to be betting our middling hands at mixed frequencies. Now, what are we going to be betting big sizings with? Well, this is the fun part. So, when we go to big sizing, 8.25, which is 150%, we're only betting 30.9% of our range, but look at the composition of our overbets. Let's look at the King 5 of spades. Let's go back to this because this is all separated by EV. So that means every hand in this 33% sizing is higher EV to bet this sizing than this sizing. And then every hand in the 150% sizing is higher EV in this bucket. So we want to bet all of our strong draws that can make nuts on the river. So all of our Ace X of spades that do not have a pair. Remember that. That's important. All of our Ace X of spades that don't have a pair. King X of spades that don't have a pair. All of our really strong tens. Ace 10 suited. King 10 suited. Queen 10 suited is up there too, I believe. All of our sets. All of our sets want to bet big. Our straights. And then some bluffs. Alright, so I want to look at the EV difference. Because like we said on the flop, the EV is not... There's no difference in a 33% flop c-bet size and a 100% flop c-bet size. So why do we have two turn sizings then? Alright, well let's go check this out. I'm going to go to the actual hand in question. Yes, I did a lot of work on this, as you can see. And we're going to go to, let's go to a hand like Ace 5 of spades. Ace 5 of spades on a 10-4-2-6 board wants to bet huge. Why is that? Well, not only do we have a ton of outs if we hit, but we also have the opportunity to win a big pot. So we want to exploit his, not necessarily exploit, that's the wrong word. We want to take advantage of his capped range, and in doing that, we want to, one, raise big, and two, raise with a hand that can make the nuts. So let's look at the, I put a sizing breakdown on every possible combination. Let's look at this. Ace 5 of spades. It's 3.33 EV to bet with 100 at 33% sizing, and it's 3.78 EV to bet. Calculator. Let's look at the EV difference. EV difference 3.78 minus 3.33. That's a 0.45 EV spike. Okay, let's look at that in percentage terms. 0.45. Let's see. 0.45. See if I'm doing this right. I don't know if I'm doing this right. All right. A 13.5% EV spike. So that's why we have two turn bet sizings, because the EV on the turn, the bet sizing actually matters. Look at that. That's pretty big. You're getting 13.5 cents on the dollar. Whereas if we look at our flop C-bet, let's do a little analysis on the flop. Yeah, there's a 0.02 difference. 0.02 divided by 3. Yeah, less than 1% of an EV difference here. So that's why we have 2 turn bet sizings and 1 flop bet sizing. Not only do we simplify the game tree, the EV difference between a 33% flop C-bet and 100% C-bet is nothing, but the turns C-bet sizing is a lot. Okay, so let's go back to the actual hand. So in this hand, he bet $1. So we know already that that's a mistake. We want to be betting huge, and we want to be betting, splitting our range 2 ways, 33% and 150%. Now, why this is good is that this is not a common overbet spot. Like, I think a lot of people realize in poker that, okay, you know, on ace-king X boards, ace-queen X boards, when we raise and the pre-flop caller calls, there'll be overbet opportunities. But there's actually other overbet opportunities in poker. The way that it works is, one, you want your opponent to be capped, so he needs to check on either the turn or the flop. Now, in this situation, he checked on the flop. So how do we react to that? Well, the turn is better for us, so we split our range into 33 and 150 and checks, and the 150% range would be hands that A, want to make a big pot, and B, want to have fold equity. So we're going to be betting our super strong hands and also our super strong draws, so we're polarized. Now, with our 33% sizing, we want to go for a cheap bluff with our middling hands, or with our bottom of our range, and then with our middling hands, we want to go for thin value. So remember, 1 flop size, 2 turn sizes, 2 river sizes. So I thought that was kind of a cool spot. If we look at, I didn't even go into the river because the river is totally different as far as complexities. But remember, when you're formulating your ranges, you want the 1-2-2 combo. So just remember that next time you want to bet the flop and you want to have 2 different ranges, just stick to 1. All right. Thanks, guys. This is Doo Doo Poker for DriveHUD.